Donald Trump has formally accepted the Republican nomination for the US Presidency this afternoon, delivering the longest acceptance speech in American history, spelling out the country's troubles with crime, terrorism and immigration. Mr. Trump spoke for an hour and 15 minutes in a speech described by many as dark. He told an enthusiastic audience that law and order is the most pressing issue facing all Americans. And if elected, Americans will finally be safe in their homes. He vowed to stop gangs and violence and to be tough on immigration.
We must immediately suspend immigration from any nation that has been compromised by terrorism until such time as proven vetting mechanisms have been put in place. We don't want them in our country. I only want to admit individuals into our country who will support our values and love our people. Anyone who endorses violence, hatred, or oppression is not welcome in our country and never, ever will be. Decades of record immigration have produced lower wages and higher unemployment for our citizens, especially for African American and Latino workers. We are going to have an immigration system that works, but one that works for the American people. We are going to build a great border wall to stop illegal immigration, to stop the gangs and the violence, and to stop the drugs from pouring into our communities.
And after 6 tonight, we'll gauge reaction to Donald Trump's speech from a Mexican immigrant now working in Arizona. But our correspondent at the Republican convention is Simon Marks. I spoke to him just after Donald Trump finished speaking and asked him if his speech revealed anything new.
Well, it was a very long speech, and at times it was a very dark speech. I think there will be people out there who say it was too long and it should have been a little bit lighter in places. But Donald Trump had a job to do tonight, a couple of different ones, actually. First of all, he had to put this convention on a different plane. He needed to overcome the sense that we'd all had since Monday that the Republican Party and Donald Trump particularly were finding it difficult to get their message out because there were so many other issues that were overshadowing the convention. Melania Trump's plagiarism earlier in the week, Ted Cruz's refusal to endorse Donald Trump just about 24 hours ago. So what Donald Trump needed to do was to come in here and command the room. He did that with a speech that was markedly different from any kind of acceptance speech that we've heard in modern times from an American presidential candidate, but one that Donald Trump and Republicans here say is illustrative of the fact that he's a different kind of candidate. As he said in the speech, he's not interested in pursuing the same old policies that are advocated by the same old politicians. That's code for Hillary Clinton, who'll be holding her convention next week. He wanted to put a radically different set of policies on the agenda, and he did that. He focused very extensively and very angrily about the tide of violent crime that he says is being committed in the United States by illegal immigrants. He says that is going to end under a Trump presidency. He threatened, as he's done before on the campaign trail, to renegotiate trade agreements, all of the major trade agreements, NAFTA between the United States, Canada and Mexico, the US-South Korea trade agreement. He called the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership dead on arrival in a Trump presidency. It's not, he said, gonna happen. These were a radical series of policies that he put forward, but they didn't neatly fit any kind of political ideology, because equally in the speech he made a play for Bernie Sanders supporters to come on board with him, and he also praised Republicans in the hall for cheering when he advocated in favor of rights for the gay and lesbian community in the United States. So he doesn't particularly neatly fit core ideological Republican precepts, and he was making it very clear that under a Trump presidency here in the United States, things are going to be very, very different.
A big chunk of it was on immigration, wasn't it?
Yes, an enormous focus of the speech, and also that's where he sounded increasingly dark and increasingly angry, and there is no question that there will be people here in the United States who say that he sounded demagogic. I was getting texts from someone who has worked with both of the Clintons in the past and is still in contact with them as the speech was being made, and he was saying, I find this absolutely terrifying. I'm worrying that this is going to resonate with voters, and I'm also worried about how she, Hillary Clinton, is going to perform against him at the televised presidential debates, which will be taking place later in the year. I mean, that was really the section of the speech where he was throwing the reddest of red meat at all of the delegates here in the room, and also at the wider television audience. I mean, look, he is a populist, but he's also, particularly on that issue and on some of the other issues in the speech, an extremist, and he made it absolutely clear that he sees a very strong hand for the executive, the presidency in this country, if he walks into the Oval Office, and he promised to do things that he can't possibly really deliver on. He's going to make America rich again. He's going to end illegal immigration. I mean, these were all enormous promises, sweeping aims and ambitions. There was very little subtlety in the speech and very little detail about precisely how he would go about doing all of that.
And how would you sum up the whole week? I mean, has it been a bit of a flop?
Well, the first 3 days were a disaster. I mean, there's no question about that whatsoever, and Republicans were panicked by it. They will be hoping that most Americans only tuned into this convention for Donald Trump's speech tonight. They'll now be sending opinion pollsters out there, canvassing, trying to find out whether Donald Trump has managed to overcome the problems earlier in the week and secure any kind of a bounce in the polls. But look, he cannot leave Cleveland claiming to be leading a unified political party. The Republicans are completely fractured. There were the delegates in the hall who are still popping balloons and heading out of here slowly, but there were all the Republicans who didn't come to Cleveland. Republican leaders, the orthodox elites of the Republican Party, its famous stars, both Presidents George Bush, Mitt Romney, John McCain, a whole host of others weren't here. This is a completely new type of Republican Party that is being put on display to the American voters. Donald Trump can only gamble that it's going to prove attractive, but we'll get a sense of just how the public has responded in the course of the next few days. And remember, Hillary Clinton has the immediate right of reply, because on Monday here in the United States, we will all be in Philadelphia, and then it'll be her party that everybody here is covering.
And what are you expecting there? I mean, are you expecting the same drama?
Well, I think that we're expecting a convention that passes off a lot more smoothly, because Hillary Clinton will want to show that she has a unified Democratic Party behind her, even if there are still enormous frictions between Hillary Clinton and the supporters of Bernie Sanders. She and Bernie Sanders, of course, have now made peace. He has endorsed her, but he has also acknowledged that he can't force his supporters to line up behind her, and a number of them are likely to be protesting against Hillary Clinton at that convention. But unlike this convention, she will be flanked by Democratic Party royalty. Barack Obama, her husband Bill Clinton, enormously popular figures within the Democratic Party. That's a positive for her in the sense that it demonstrates to Democrats that their party is much more unified and behind her than this party is behind Donald Trump. But it's also a potential negative, because it allows Donald Trump to point at the tableau that will exist of Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. And as he did here tonight in the speech that he made on the final night of this convention, he will say, really, to the American voters in swing battleground states like this one, Ohio, really? You want more of these guys? That's the dynamic that is now created for the election campaign that we're going to be covering all the way through until November the 8th.